Well, I don't have to hush everybody to get started here, I see. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Dynamic Mapping of Secondary Cities Symposium. My name is Jason and I am the Faculty Director of Harvard's Center for Geographic Analysis. And with my colleagues Phil Young and Keith Clark, I am one of the co-directors of the NSF IUC-RC-funded Spatiotemporal Innovation Center. The Secondary Cities Project is one of the major initiatives of our center. Because of their rapid growth and lack of planning, secondary cities pose particular challenges to commerce, services, and governance. They demand an integrated space-time approach. We are happy to be a part of this university-agency collaboration. And we're grateful for the support of the Office of the Geographer of the United States Department of State and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Harvard's CGA is well positioned to contribute to this project. The CGA, first and foremost, provides geospatial technology services to the community of students, faculty, and researchers here at Harvard. But at the same time, we prioritize products that benefit users worldwide. We have worked with Harvard researchers in business, environmental science, public health, sociology, urban planning, and public services, among others. All of these fields are important to understanding and managing secondary cities. Now, our open source tools, such as WorldMap and other web mapping applications built on ArcGIS Online and other products, these were born from specific requests from our own research community, but they're well suited to the capacity building efforts of the Secondary Cities Project. So this afternoon will be dedicated to emerging tools and technologies for mapping secondary cities. So to introduce these presentations, I welcome Professor Melinda Laituri of Colorado State University. So welcome.
Okay. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Jason, for your opening comments. Before I start, I want to be sure to thank all the organizers for their hard work on putting this symposium together. Wendy Guan and her team here at Harvard, thanks for hosting this, and Faith Sternlieb from Colorado State University. Faith, stand up. You do deserve applause for this. This wouldn't have been possible without all their organizational and logistical assistance. So to kick this off, why are we doing this? What is this all about? Why did you all decide to come here? The focus is on dynamic mapping tools for urban mapping useful for developing countries. We want to set that context. We also have an emphasis on thinking about emergency preparedness, resiliency planning, and urban sustainability. This afternoon, we're going to have a half-day session that focuses on an opportunity to examine some of the tools that we want to talk about. We've invited a number of groups from the private, from the public, and from NGO sectors to present, but this is certainly not an exhaustive list of the different products, tools, things that we want to discuss. And that's what we'll do this afternoon. So there's be two breakout sessions that will run concurrently. The one room is just to go right out here to your left. It's the Belfer Case Study Room. And the other room, you go right out here, you go to your left, and then you're going to take a right, and that's where the seminar room is. So those are where both the two venues are after we're done with our opening comments today. The second day, we're going to focus on looking at how we define dynamic mapping and examining secondary cities in developing countries. And we have an exciting lineup of a number of speakers, a number of panels and presentations to provide an overview of mapping needs and to have practitioners describe their experience and lessons learned. This is really what we want to get at, having a discussion about some of the lessons that we're learning and figuring out a venue where we can have this kind of conversation. The outcome of this workshop or this symposium, what we want to have come out of this is a discussion. We want to create a continuing dialogue to assess the utility of these different tools, and we want to identify lessons learned to identify gaps and limitations that these tools and our new approaches to mapping are starting to elicit. So let's talk a little bit about dynamic mapping and what is it. I would argue that dynamic mapping is a process, a practice, and a product. And in terms of thinking about a process, it's composed of people. You're all here. You're all participating in this in some way. People determine what data to collect, how to collect the data, the approach for data collection, who is going to participate, who is going to examine, and who's going to use it. So it's made up of a whole number of different actions that people participate in. The practice has to do then with how we look at this suite of tools such as mobile technologies for data generation to actively engage different stakeholders and to facilitate this practice of collecting information, collecting data. And finally, the product, which is intersecting these tools with web-based maps, geographic information systems to form the basis for dynamic mapping, where it may take a whole number of different things of what we want to identify as dynamic mapping. Things that have to do with an interactive map, how we may zoom to different spatial scales, how we may turn on and off different layers, how we begin to analyze and assess this information, where visualization is the key component to these products, allowing for zooming in and going to these different scales. Now I've put this up here like this, but this is not a linear process. I don't want you to think this is a linear process by any stretch of the imagination. It really is an interactive thing between these three different P's, if you will. So what about secondary cities? We really want to examine this within the context of secondary cities. And in your program, there's a 2-page discussion or description of what the secondary cities projects are all about. But just to give you a short definition of secondary cities, they really are non-primary cities throughout the world. They're regional hubs for commerce, services, and governance. They can have populations that range anywhere from 100,000 to 5 million. And what I show in this map here that's from The Economist is looking at only the green, yellow, and orange cities are shown there in terms of population size. So you can see that this is the extent of secondary cities in 2016 around the globe. And what we can learn from this is that we have this urban continuum that's forming where we're looking at larger and larger metropolitan areas as well as urban corridors. But the key things about these secondary cities is that they're poorly mapped. We want to be able to figure out ways that we can start to collect information about these locations and be able to map them. So how are we going to do this? I'm back to my slide then, where again, I don't want you to think this as a linear process, but we do want to look at the different components of this, where we're starting to see we have GIS experts, developers, programmers, coders out there creating all kinds of new, exciting, innovative products. And we facilitate this and share this with other people through a number of different venues, whether it's through training, education, capacity building. And I just put the logo for secondary cities. That's just one example of that kind of training activity that's going on. There's many of them that many of you are all part of here in this audience. Then there's the practice. We start to look at this practice and we see that we have public-private partnerships, we have open source products, we have commercial, we have mobile technology that all have to do with these platforms, software, hardware, a whole number of different types of products that we're going to see demonstrated for us this afternoon. And then finally, the products, how are we actually utilizing them and looking at them? How are we visualizing them? And how are we analyzing them? And I would say that analysis is what kind of seems to be falling off the table quite a lot when we look at these things. Visualization seems to be very important, but where is the analysis piece in all of this? And so I would like to have that be part of our discussion here for the next day and a half. So what's my charge to you for the next few hours that we're together? It would be nice if we could start to begin to think about what best practices are, how we can think about collaboration amongst these different products, how we can maybe build new partnerships. And I really think there's a whole number of things that come out of this, but the critical thing that I think is coming forward with the different products that are available to us to do mapping is the ability to have interoperability between the different products that we're working with? How do they communicate with each other? How are they able to bring good metadata in from one version of a platform to another kind of platform? How are we able to use things without being too embedded in a particular technological approach and being able to have an open mind with respect to how we want to collect data, utilize it, analyze it, and divesting ourselves of some of the baggage that we carry with us in terms of setting that stage for doing this kind of work. So that's really what I want us to talk about. I could go off on a whole hour talking and longer talking about metadata and how important I think it is, but I won't do that to you. I think it will come up in the conversations that we have. So